Today we'll learn about execute SQL task from SSIS, the SQL Server Integration Services. As the name implies, this task executes a query statement against a database, and we can supply the query statement in three different ways. We'll see that when we are configuring this task in SSIS project. And the result set, what we get back from the query statement we have executed against our database. As you will see, there are four options. The result set returns nothing, single row, or full result set, or the XML format. So we'll configure all these and take an example of each one of them. So let's get started. In Visual Studio, the SSDT tool, the SQL Server Data Tools, I have created a project, execute SQL task, and then a SSIS package, package 1. So as we see that execute SQL task is here in the toolbox, which simply drag and drop. Before we configure the properties of it. As I said earlier, it executes against a database, so why not create a connection to a database? New connection, and create our SQL Server, which I already have this Happy Burger database that I have on my local instance of laptop. So let's change the name to be a little more readable. So this is our project level connection. Why did I choose the project level? Because I'll be creating other packages for the same task using a different result set property. So we can use the same database connection. So once we have done that, let's right click, edit, and see what is going on. Obviously, this is the name property. We can change it or we can leave it like that. Description, we can write a little description here. This is test for non-result set property. So what we are going to test here is the result set property to be none. As you can see, there are four options, but first we'll create an example of the result set which returns nothing. And connection, we choose here Happy Burgers, and input of the query statement I chose to be direct input. In next example we may try something else, but for now let's do this. Now for a moment let's take a look at couple different statement and a little bit about our database that we are working with. This is the database Happy Burger. It has a table called employee. If I execute this, we see this table here. It has some records for employees, and this is a query statement that we'll be executing from our execute SQL task. You can see this is an update statement. It updates the first name to be John, where the first name is equal to Johnson. If we see that here, this is the first record. If we execute this statement, it will change the name of this person to be John, and we'll be executing this from the SSIS. So let's get back there. Direct input, we click this button here, we get a query editor window and paste the statement. Click OK, and we are all set to go. Let me repeat this. We had to set the connection against the database, database that we are going to execute this against, and there is no parameters for this statement that we need, and we'll see in the next example that we need some parameter at some of the SQL statement. Result set is set to none, therefore if we go there, click it, this add remove buttons are grayed out, meaning they are disabled. So if we execute this, we will have the same effect as executing it in the SQL Server Management Studio. So click OK and save our package, and let's go and execute this. It executed pretty fast. I stopped debugging. Let's go here and see what is the result. You can see the first name was Johnson. If I execute, it is now John. So this is how we execute a query statement that did an update to the database, whose connection we have chosen here, and this does not return any result set, so we don't need to worry about capturing it in any variables, as we'll see in the next example. So this is the first example of executing SQL tasks. For our next example, we'll use the result set property to be single row. That is, by executing the SQL statement, it will return only a single row. So let's take a look at our SQL statement. This is the SQL statement we'll be executing. Let's see. It returns the first name concatenated with the last name, and the resulting column name is M full name. So we can see it is single row and single column. We'll execute this statement and we'll capture the value, which will obviously be single, one value in a variable of the string data type. So let's get to this. Let's create a new package, package 2. Let's close this one and drag and drop the execute SQL task. Double click it to edit. We'll leave the name and description property to be the same. Choose the result set to be single row. Connection, we'll choose Happy Burger, and direct input, we can choose to have a file connection where we can create a query file. I just wanted to demonstrate that how we do that. So let's come back here and save this. It is called result set single row. So let's use this file as a connection. File connection, new connection, existing file, and result set single row. This is where our query is and we want to execute that. So open it, click OK. So the result will be the statement will be coming from this query in this file. Now we don't need any parameter. We saw that here. There is nothing we have to supply to this statement. It already is doing just the employee ID equal to 1. Since it is an example, we are not really making it complex. In the next example, we'll see what else we can do with this. So there is no parameter, but we do need a result set, something to capture that result set in. So click add and result set. If you see that here, this is the name of the column that will be returned. So we'll call it M full name, and we want to capture that in a variable. So we can create the variable right here, or we could have created it elsewhere before. So let's see, this variable will be name full name, and its namespace is user type, and data type is a string because this is what we are getting from the database, and click OK, and I think we are all set to go. So click OK. Now we want to make sure that the result of the query statement is captured in this, and it will, but I really want to make sure that it is somehow tells me that my this package is working correctly. Excuse me. So for that, in order to test that, what I have done is we'll take a script task here and see if we can take. If you're not familiar with the script task, in some other video I have uh, um, given some example of this video or a blog post, but you can look it up online. There are several examples for this. So excuse me, we connect this to a script task. Let's configure the script task. First of all, I will choose the language to be Visual Basic. The variables that I need this script to be available as read-only is the full name, where I'm capturing the value from the result set. Click OK and then click Edit Script. I am not going to write very complex program here because that's not really the purpose here. We only want to test how the result set return the value. So if you are not too familiar with that, just follow along, and you will see it's not really very complex to read this code. So there is a function in Visual Basic which is message box. It simply pops up a value that you supply to it. So if I say hello world here, this will simply pop up as a dialog box saying hello world. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to um, pop up the value of a variable which is available to this script, and that variable is full name, the value of which we need so to make it a string, and that's all we need. So we can see this is the message box. It will pop up the value that which is stored in the variable called full name. So let's save this and close the script window and then click OK. So what will happen when we run this, the result set will put the value in the variable, and that variable in the next task, which is a script task, will pop up that value. So let's save this and execute this package 2. John Smith. This is what the value we were expecting, if you see that here, because this is the statement we are running. So John Smith, we return. We could have set this property also to be some meaningful caption for this dialog box, but that's not really the purpose here. So click OK and your package finishes. For the next example, we'll use the result set property to be the full result set, and we'll capture that in an object variable, and then we'll enumerate through it, loop through it. So let's get it started. We'll create a new package, package 3. The project level connection is available here. We'll drag and drop execute SQL task, do some initial configuration as we have been doing before. The connection is our Happy Burger database, and we'll be writing the SQL statement directly here. We could have used a variable or file connection, but we'll simply write it here. What we'll be using as a query statement is this, which will return us the all the rows in the employee table. And result set, sorry, we didn't set the result set property, so we'll set it to full result set. Go to the result set. Now these buttons are enabled. Add. One thing to note here, the result set, when you are choosing the full result set, the first result set will be considered, the name of it will be 0 because it's a 0 base index. Variable, let's create a new variable here. Let's call it object employees, and the type we'll choose for this is object. The scope is package 3, which is where we are. And so let's go over it again. We set the result set property to be the full result set, connection to be our project level connection, happy burger. This is our SQL statement. If we run it, we see that it returns all the rows from the employees table. Click OK, click OK here. So now we'll run this, and we'll capture the result set in a object variable. Now let's do some more configurations here. In order for us to test it if our package is configured properly, I mean the execute SQL task, what we are going to do, as we did in the previous example, we'll just take one column from this and loop it through the whole result set, and use the message box function from Visual Basic to pop up the first names of in each row set. We could have picked up any column here, or all the columns, but we'll have to create all these 11 variables. So just to make it short and also test that we have configured our execute SQL task component properly, we'll just use the script task to pop up the name, first name of each person in here, each employee. So let's go ahead and do that. We have configured this part. Now let's choose for each loop container. If you are not familiar with it, I have another video that I have loaded multiple files using this for each loop container. So let's connect this to this and double click to configure this. We don't need to change the name or anything, but let's go to the connection and choose this to be the ADO enumerator, because we are getting the result set in an object variable, which is a ADO record set, and we'll use the object employees, which is where our data is coming, and the rows in the first table, it returns only one table, the statement we are executing in our previous task, execute SQL task. It returns one result set, which is all the records from the employees table. Now as I said, we'll capture the first name column values and loop it through and pop up this message. So let's go to the variable mapping and actually create a new variable and call it first name. The type is the string data type, and the scope is package 3. So let's click OK. So what will happen, the value from the first name will be captured in this. One thing to note here, that indexes are 0 based. So for example, this is the column 0, This is column 1, column 2, column 3, column 4, and so on. So we are capturing the first name, so we'll use the index to be 1. If we were doing this, then index will be 2. So let's change the index to 1. And now we need to put a script task here so that we can see the values. Double click, choose the language to Visual Basic. You can choose C# also. It's very simple statements we are using from that language, so it doesn't really matter. Read only variable, so we'll take the first name variable. This is where it will get populated. Edit script. Message box and DTS variables and first name dot value. This is what will pop up every time the for each loop container goes through a row in the result set. So we are done with this. Let's save this, click OK. Now let's save the package and run it. John, that's the first name in the record set if you want to verify. This is what we should be getting. And also once again we could have changed the caption of this dialog box by setting those property in the message box, but that's not really the purpose here to learn the Visual Basic programming. Click OK, it will go to the next one, and similarly it will loop through all the 9 records, and then we are done. Stop the debugging. In this next example, we'll use the XML result set type. As we saw in the very beginning, there are 4 types of result set. So let's create a new package, and as usual, put the execute SQL task here. Double click to configure this. The first thing is the database connection, our happy burger, and we'll put the SQL statement through a variable I have created, or maybe I'll have to create. No, it's not there, so let's just first create the variable. Go to the variable window and create the variable. Call it T-SQL string type, and we'll get the SQL statement from here. You can see that is selecting from the employee table, and the return format will be the XML. Put that value here, and also while we are here, let's create another variable called XML. So this will be our return value from the result set after executing the SQL statement. So now let's edit this again. We choose the result set type to be XML, and variable where the query statement will be coming from is the T-SQL, and we don't need any parameters. Result set we can add, And just like the full result set, this will be the 0, and we'll put this um, result set into the variable which is the string data type XML. And that's it. Click OK. If we execute this, yes, it will fetch the data in the XML format and put that in the variable. But how do I know that this is what it did? So for that, what I'm going to do is get another script task, and once again we will not be using very complex programming, but something that I can get off the Google or somewhere, very simple statement that will output the data from this variable where we are capturing the result set into a file on our file system. So let's double click this or edit it, change the language to Visual Basic, because this is what I had learned programming in. I did some in C Sharp also, but it doesn't really matter here because we are using very simple statement. Read only. We will pick up the variable string XML and edit the script. It takes a minute. And let's see. So we want to output the value which is stored in this str XML variable into a file. For that, we will just follow some very simple statement. My computer and file system, and write all text, and this is the function we'll be using. And so the values we have to provide is the file path complete. So I will put that on my D drive, and we'll call this, let's say, employee data dot text or XML, whichever one. You can change the extension. And what is the next variable argument? We have to supply text as a string. So instead of providing a text, we'll use the variable value. So just like previous example, dts dot variables, which is the collection we get from this object, and our variable name is strxml, and value of it converted to string. Okay, so last argument we didn't provide, that's why it is giving some kind of error. Let's set it to false. What it means, do you want, if the file exists, do you want the data of this variable to be appended to the end of the file or not? So I said no, because we don't have the file there and we don't really want to append to it. So it looks like there is no error anymore. So let's just close this, click OK. Once again, let me just go over this. This is the execute SQL task. We are capturing the result set as an XML in a variable called str XML variable, which is of the string data type. And then using this script task, we are outputting that value which is stored in the variable into a file on our file system. So let's just go ahead and run this. Okay, it ran fine. It looks like, let's see. This is the D drive. Okay, if I open this, I see this file data. Maybe if I change this to XML, let's see what happens now. So this will open in the XML reader, and we can see that this is the data from our employees table. So I guess this ran fine. Let's stop this. So now we have covered all the four types of result sets, which is none, single row, full result set, and the XML. We also used another property in a different way, which is how to input the SQL statement that will execute. So direct input, we did that the first time. Then we did the file connection, if you recall from the previous example, or maybe the one before that. And this last one we used where we used the variable T-SQL. This variable is here, and this is what was executed. So I think we have covered all of them. Hope you learned something, and I appreciate your comments if you put any out there. Thank you. Bye.